Welcome guys for another session on Excel topic. In this video, I would like to just talk about two functions, namely Sumif and Sumifs function. What is a Sumif function? Well, a Sumif function basically is a function to sum a range of cells based on one single criteria. Whereas Sumifs function is essentially the same with multiple criterias. So let's look at a simple illustration here and see how that functions work. I've got a fictitious data here on sales by region and by products. There are basically two products we've got by region, and we have a channel which is a retail or an online, and the quantity sold and the dollar figure here. Say in this table we just want to evaluate what are the sales based on a certain criteria. So let's look at one criteria for a Sumif function, and if we have multiple criteria, how we need to use Sumifs function to help us analyze the data. So let's look at the region. I've just keyed in a data validation here, so I put a data validation by region, and we'll start the formula here. Say our criteria is East, so we want to sum the sales of the column I here, but we don't want all the sales, we just want the sales only for the region East or West or whatever region we choose here. So sales based on one criteria, we use a Sumif function. So essentially a Sumif function. So a Sumif function, let's start with equals to Sumif, and as you see, once we type in the formula details, it adds the cells specified by a given condition or a criteria. So we'll open the brackets and look at what are the arguments we need. The first argument is called a range. Here, though it is not very clear, the range is the criteria range. That the first argument for the first input required for this function is the criteria range. Now in our case, the criteria is the region, right? That's the region. Obviously the range of cells which holds that criteria is the criteria range. So in our example, the criteria range here is the region. So we would highlight all those range of cells. That's the criteria range, comma. What is the criteria? Obviously the criteria is the region, so we want to add up in this table all the sales for the region East. So the next argument, the criteria is East, so we'll reference that to that particular cell, comma, and the sum range. So which range of cells do we need to add? Column I. Close the brackets and enter. So there you go, we have 32,000. So the sales for East is 32,000. How can we verify that? It's very simple. I've already created this as a table, so I'll filter the region for East, and you can quickly see 32,000. So that's the sales. So if I change this to North, it's 45,500. We can have a quick check. So I'll disable East and enable North. There you go, 45,500. So that is a Sumif function. So to sum a range of cells based on a single criteria is a Sumif function. Now let us take this example to a further level. Now okay, that's fine. We know what is the sales by region. What if I want to find out the channel, how the sales came through? Like I just want to find out the details between the retail and the online. So we are introducing another criteria, which is the channel. So when you have more than one criteria, you cannot use Sumif. So that is where the Sumifs function comes in handy. So now let us look at that example as well. So I've got the region as North. I'll copy that region here. Now let me introduce channel as well. So we have channel. So I just need not know only the sales for the region, but I need to further bifurcate between the channel. So we have two criterias, region and channel. So the formula for that would be a sumifs function. So let me start that here. Sumifs ifs. Now, in the sumifs function, we do not start with the criteria range first. In sumifs, we would need the sum range, or the range of, or the column or the range of cells where you want to add. That becomes the first argument. Unlike in the sum if, the sum range was the last argument. So if you look at this sum if, so we saw this, the sum range was the last argument and the criteria range was the first argument. Whereas in sum ifs, it's different. So in sumifs, the first argument is the sum range. So let me clear this filter. So we have the full table here. Okay, sumifs. So the first criteria for this function is the sum range. Obviously, our sum range is between I5 to I21. That's the sum we want to add. Based on what? Based on a criteria. What is a criteria? Here we have two criterias. The first criteria is the region. Here it is not necessary in what order you create the criterias. It can be any order. It doesn't mean the channel can come in the first order, then the region. As long as there are multiple criterias, the function will take care of itself. So there is no specific order that the criterias needs to be inputted here. So the moving forward, what we need to input here is the criteria range. So our criteria range is the region. Again, we will choose the column E, comma, and the criteria, our first criteria is, we have chosen the region, so obviously our criteria is north. Now, the sumifs also accommodate multiple criteria. So all you need to do is just keep on highlighting the criteria range and the criteria. So the next criteria is we want the channel. So obviously the criteria range is the channel. Highlight that, comma, and the criteria. So let's say we put the criteria here in G32. I'll key that in. So anyway, I'll key that in there. So let's close the bracket and enter. This will give 0 because we have not keyed in the channel here. So let's say we're going to create online. We type in online. Enter. There you go. So this sumifs is out of that 45,500, the online sales is 12,000 because it's looking at not only the north region but it also by channel. So if I go and change that to retail, not typed in properly. So 33,500. So sumifs accommodates more than one criteria, whereas the sum is for single criteria. Again, to just give a further extension of this exercise, well, if you want to avoid the formulas, the pivot table is another fantastic way of easily drilling the data, summarizing data in a very fast and efficient way. In formulas, you've got to remember all this criteria range, criteria you got to highlight, whereas the pivot table is a very fast, convenient way of analyzing data. I will just touch the basic concept of pivot table here, as I've already done many videos on pivot table, just to showcase you here how quick the same evaluation what we have tried here can be achieved in a very fast way through a simple pivot table. So this is the table we have, and pivot table is, we go to insert. So insert pivot table. So obviously it highlights where the data is. So where do we want to create the pivot table? We can choose in a new sheet or in an existing sheet. So let me put in existing sheet. I will choose a location. I will click on here and say OK. So we've got a pivot table. So in the pivot table, essentially you have 4 different areas. One is the area where the values you want to display, and then you have the columns, the column data. how you want to show the data with by column, or if you want to show it by in rows, and then you can also have the filter options here. So let's bring in the sales data. So sales is what we want to find out. So that's the value. So you will see essentially now we have got the whole sales 190,000 as the total sales. Now what do I want? I want to look by region. So I can bring that to the rows area. The moment I bring that, now you can see by region. Now okay, that's fine. Now if I want to know by channel as well, so you can bring in the channel to your column. So you just go click that, highlight it, and bring it to the column. So now you can quickly analyze the sales by channel and by region as well. Now if you want further bifurcation, so you want by product, you can either bring the product to a filter where you can see all products, or you can just choose, if I just want only the smartphone, by region and by channel. So that's how pivot table very quickly dissects the data and drills down the data based on the report filter you have chosen. Or you might as well bring that product within the region below. So there you go. So within the region, you have this by product, and of course you can clear the filter for the product as well. So that's the channel, and in the product, so if I go back here and let's clear out the filter for all, okay, and you can bring that product by region here, or you can bring the region below the product as well. So you can see by product, and within the product how that 50,000 sales of online came through. This is the breakup by online and by retail, and that's totals to 90. And again by product, and within the product by each region, what they contributed to the sales, you can analyze. So pivot table is a very quick way of analyzing data, especially when we have multiple criterias and you just want to quickly summarize the data. Pivot table is the way to go. Anyway, I'll stop this session for today, and we'll look forward for another session soon. Thanks guys, thanks for watching this. I hope you enjoyed this video. Thank you. Bye bye.